hey, yo, what's up? You know, it's been a hot minute. It's just that minute's been boiling for a little while. I think the pot is just molten. But yeah, I was making YouTube videos for years. I really liked it. I was really passionate about it, and then all of a sudden I just didn't like it. Right now, I'm going into this I'm making this for me. I'm editing it in iMovie, not because I don't have access to Premiere Pro, just because I like the UI in iMovie better. I'm more comfortable with it. I wanted to make this video very badly. In fact, I'm gonna start a whole new series of videos. That's right, it's pretty absurd. I'm gonna make 2 projects. Here's project number 1. I love fish. I love the ocean. The ocean is so cool to me. The ocean just inspires in me this like childlike awe and wonder that I don't really get from anything else. Like, it's so alien. I've always really liked drawing mythical kind of fish. Like, man, you know, you go down into the deep ocean and you find this weird Leviathan-sized fish with lights on its back, and it has clear skin, and it has, you know, 16 eyes placed on its stomach. I've just always liked the idea of these super strange fish. So when I would get home from work or from school and I'd be exhausted, instead of trying to study art like I used to do, all I would do is sit down and I would draw these weird fish. I'd draw super strange fish. And I came up with some really weird ideas. And eventually I was like, man, you know what would be so cool? If I compiled these ideas into a book, right? So I had like this journal of this guy exploring the ocean, and he keeps finding these strange fish that have never been discovered before, and continues to log all his discoveries in this journal with drawings and writing, you know, like some anatomical breakdowns of these fish. Just like basically what I would want to read, you know? I want to make the thing I would want to read. If someone made a fish journal where it was a bunch of weird fish compiled into a book, dude, I would buy that so fast. So I figured, what can you be more passionate about than something that you would want to read, you know? I really wanted to share my process with this, you know? So I'm gonna make a series of YouTube videos, and in each one, I'm gonna design another fish for this book. I'm gonna write about it. I'm gonna research it. I'm gonna draw it. I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna make a fish every single video, okay? So the basic idea for this book. So a man's exploring the ocean, very shallow waters, like very, very shallow waters. And then he finds like an amulet or a necklace or something that allows him to breathe underwater and swim deeper, and he kind of goes deeper into the ocean and explores. But I want it to be progressively weirder and weirder fish. So he starts in the shallow waters with fairly normal fish. Fish that, well, they're pretty alien to us. They're not real fish. You know, you could see them existing. You're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's something that if someone said, hey, we just discovered this fish, I'd be like, oh, neat, you know, that's a fish. But slowly, as the book unfolds, he finds weirder and weirder fish. Fish with oddly humanoid features. Fish with gold-plated armor. Fish with giant skulls for heads. Of course, my goal is to make all of these make as much biological sense as possible, because that's another guilty pleasure of mine, weird creature designs where everything makes some sort of biological sense. But I also want to have a sense of whimsy and wonder, which means if there's this really cool thing but I can't make sense of it, I'm gonna still do it. I think the first biome underwater that this guy's gonna encounter is gonna be a kelp forest. Whenever I was playing Subnautica and I was going through the creepvine forests, I was just like, that was one of my favorite places in the game. I don't know. It was very whimsical to me. But like, look how cool this is. Look how pretty that is. Dude, like the moss-covered rocks, all the different, oh man, dude, it's so cool. I want to make 2 different life forms that do a very good job of camouflaging themselves into this forest, which basically means they're gonna look like kelp. And I want to do 2 different things. I want to do one, a fish that eats the kelp to survive, looks like kelp, so it swims around, maybe it has leaf protrusions, maybe it looks like a leaf. You know, it basically is a fish that looks like kelp that eats the kelp, okay? And then I want to do a carnivorous plant that looks like the kelp and traps any fish that swim by it because they think it's just normal kelp. So for the first step, I have research. You like that iMovie preset text? Yeah, it's pretty swag, huh? Yeah, I told you, I'm using iMovie now. I like the UI better, so deal with it. You're gonna get no text appears on the screen. It all has to fade in somehow. It seems like rockfish are the most popular one, so let's see what they do that lets them survive in the kelp forest. So these fish are commonly found in kelp forests. A wide range of marine mammals inhabit the kelp forest. Oh, I could do a marine mammal. That'd be pretty cool. It would make sense. So fish use kelp forest for like camouflage, like a safe place where they can get kind of lost in the kelp and the other fish can't find them, or they could use it as just a place for food. So like I think sea lions eat the fish, so the fish go there for camouflage so that they're not just in the open ocean, they have somewhere to hide, but then the sea lions go there because they know there's a lot of fish hiding there. They're a natural buffet for birds such as crows, warblers, and starling. Oh, what if I had that fish that looks like kelp feed on bugs instead of kelp? So instead of eating the kelp leaves, he eats the bugs. That'd be kind of cool. So let me look up a bug-eating fish and see what they look like. I'm getting a bunch of bugs eating fish. Trout, bass, and other fish mostly eat insects. What does a trout do? How does a trout eat insects? How is it specialized to eat insects? It has that little weird shape to its mouth, almost like a beak-like shape. Okay, so there are larvae that are underwater, and they slowly metamorphosize, whatever the word is, to turn into air-breathing, flying creatures. And the transition from being down here underwater and going up kind of exposes them to predators. That's cool. Mayflies are so funny to me, man. They just spend like a year, like they spend so long underwater, and then they come up for like 1 day and just bang it out and then die. Yeah, it eats spiders. How the archerfish guns down spiders. Okay, you guys ready for this video? It's probably gonna be a pretty cool video.
A master of physics, the archerfish can make lightning-quick calculations to perfect its aim and dislodge prey.
That's so cool. Things like this exist. Isn't that crazy? That's so crazy to me. Things like this exist. A fish that can spray water out of its mouth and knock things into the water like it's bowling. If you're a fish who's going to eat insects, you can do one of 2 things, from the way I understand it. You can wait for the insects to come to you, such as like the mayflies falling down onto the surface of the water, or them coming from the bottom up to the surface. You know, you can wait for the insects to come to you, or you can do what the archerfish does, and you can take insects from the land and pull them into your terrain.
The fish's accurate 6-foot range.
6-foot range, dude. I like the idea of it forcing the insects into the water. I think that's really cool. So some ways it could do that. One, like the archerfish does, it sprays water and knocks it into the water. There could be something where it pulls it into the water. Maybe it has like a spider type. Maybe it has like a tongue like a chameleon. Is that something that a fish could have? So bug-eating animals, from my understanding, tend to have really long tongues. Yeah, insectivore, that's the name. So like the tongues kind of allow it to, like a long sticky tongue, they stick out the tongue and then the bug is stuck to it. And okay, and birds too. Oh, what if it had like a beak type structure that it would, like, it had like almost like a alligator or crocodile hunting style, where it went like, hum, and like snapped. It like kind of hovered above right at the surface of the water, and it snapped at bugs that were too close. That'd be kind of cool. But I kind of like it having like the tongue that goes. Are fish able to have long tongues? I can't think of any fish with long tongues. Oh, it's that weird parasite thing. Dude, those are so cool. I want to make a parasite now. I should put a parasite somewhere in the book. One that like replaces the organ like this one does. This parasite goes into the fish's mouth and replaces the fish's tongue. Wait, does it look like a long tongue, or does it have a long tongue? It's the Red Sea. I can't find any actual information on it. Like, does it have a long tongue or not? My guess is that they call it that because it looks like a tongue, because it does look like a tongue, and it's long. So let's look at what happens if this thing eats plants. Let's look at, okay, so he lives in like a kelp forest type thing, and he eats kelp. It seems like all the fish that eat kelp have really tiny mouths. At least these two do. Yeah, look, this one does too. Okay, so it seems like the fish that eat kelp have really small mouths, which makes sense because they don't have to take large bites of anything. They're kind of just like going. So my two main options right now are a fish that eats insects or a fish that eats kelp. And right now I feel like a fish that eats insects is just it's a little extra, you know? I want the main thing of this fish to be that, hey, he sustains himself in this kelp forest and this kelp forest alone. So I think it would kind of be really cool if I called him like the Kelpfish, made him eat kelp, I made him look like kelp, and I wanted to only really be able to survive in these kelp forests. Like, if it wanders off too far, its camouflage doesn't work. If it wanders off too far, its food source is gone. Like I said, I kind of want him to just be weird for the sake of being weird, so what if I gave him like a little tiny beak? So he like, and he like tears the kelp and eats it like that. These things are so cool. I've never seen this before. Dude, these things are dope.
When they descend to feed, the reef itself is under threat.
They eat algae, but they're taking rock and coral. Oh, that's so cool, man. A beak would be used for crushing. If this thing had a beak, it would be used for crushing. Or, think about this, it could be used for snipping. So if this thing had a beak, it would make sense. So if I had this really tiny fish with a tiny mouth, it might have a really hard time eating large amounts of coral. I mean, large amounts of kelp. It just wouldn't have enough strength or pull to get kelp leaves broken up, especially like a tough kelp leaf. So it would make sense if it had like a beak with pretty powerful jaws and was like, "Ka." Is there a beak for snipping? I like the idea of him having a beak just because I think it would look cool. I think it would just be kind of like a sharp, kind of like the parrotfish. It would be like a parrotfish beak that he goes, ha, huh, and like snips. He basically snips the coral leaf with his beak and then eats it. Let's talk about how he camouflages himself. So the idea I had is that he had a lot of like protrusions. His fins looked like leaves, and they were kind of long and wavy, and he also had some extra protrusions that looked very similar to leaves. So he almost looked like a lump of coral floating through the water. Not coral, kelp. Yeah. Something like the sea dragon. The sea dragon's a really good inspiration for this guy. Look at that, how cool that is. Animals find so many ways to survive, man. It's so cool to me. Oh, the way that thing is built is so cool. I like that a lot. I want to get like that a tattoo or something. I like that a lot. I guess plants have their way of surviving too. I don't know what this is doing for them, but something. Oh, he is really cool. Okay, I like these. I like these a lot, but I also like the really traditional, like the super tall ones that people see. I could put some of those little dot things on them. I don't know what they are. Probably like seed pods, or I don't know what they are. But I could put some of those on him. I think I have everything I need. He's going to be a fish with covered in kelp leaves, with a beak to pinch and tear and snip kelp. Really, just snip, I think, is the best word I can think of. What if it's like scissors? Scissors snip. What if his beak worked kind of like scissors do? I'm gonna do some exploratory drawing. I'm gonna explore the idea, mess with the concept, and I'm gonna see what comes out of it. Okay, hey, it's the next day, and I just looked back at the other footage. I realized it would have been really cool to do one of those clap transitions where I'm like, and then it cuts to the next day. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that now. Alright. Hold on, wait, I'm gonna do a cooler version of it. That was pretty cool, huh? That was pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and grab you. Parrotfish. We got things camouflaged as nature. We just got some basic fish anatomy stuff. Oh, okay, I'll explain why I have this one here. I thought it would be really cool for him to have a long snoot like this boy. It's an elephant fish. And then I wanted to have really pretty big fins, kind of like a betta fish, but they look like kelp leaves. So I just was like, okay, what would look cool silhouette-wise? Now, I liked two of these. I liked him, and I liked him. Alright? The rest of them are kind of cool, but not quite what I'm looking for. Went over both of these, and I drew some basic, like, sketches. They're not any good. The whole point is just to get the feel for the thing. So, his body is a stem, and the rest of the things are the leaves. This thing I thought would be a cool idea, where they basically have an elephant fish type schnoz, a little beak at the end they use to snip all the leaves, which I think is honestly really adorable. I was the reason he's shaped like that is I was kind of looking at things like these kelp leaves, and I was like, oh, they're squiggly, they're not perfectly straight. And then I looked at him, I was like, oh, he's really interesting and cool, and he's really squiggly. So I was like, what? Oh, can I make a squiggly fish? Now, biologically speaking, no idea if this thing could swim or not, but I do think it looks kind of cool. I might mix the two worlds and like have something that, as opposed to being that shape or that shape, is more kind of like that shape. I will do another clap transition. I swam slowly, cold, slimy leaves brushing up against my skin, one after the other. Every time I pulled kelp away from my vision, it was only met with yet more. The forest seemed never-ending. That wasn't a bad thing, however. The floor was scattered with giant rocks covered in moss, lined with small critters such as crabs or lizard-like creatures. Small bugs scurried quickly along the surface of the water, almost teleporting from place to place. Despite how hard it was to see, one thing was for certain. There was an extremely wide variety of life. Everywhere my eyes landed was a different creature, each just as enchanting as the last. From otters whose eyes looked eerily human, to worms who were about as far from humans as life comes. However, my most notable discovery I made that day was near impossible to spot. A small branch of loose kelp drifted by my head. I'd seen hundreds of pieces of severed kelp that day, so I didn't bat a second eye. That was, until it moved. Not like the rest of the leaves, being pushed by the flow of the water with no control of where they end up. No, it swam. As I took a closer look, I realized that what I saw wasn't kelp at all, but instead a fish. The fish was a yellow-green color that matched the plant life around it almost perfectly. It had a long, skinny body, no bigger than my hand, that resembled a stalk of kelp. There were small protrusions of flesh covering its entire body that it seemed to have no control over. Its fins were large and leaf-shaped. They were much darker green than the fish itself. They swayed in the water as naturally as any real leaf would. It was no wonder I had mistaken it for a plant. The creature was a master of camouflage. Even when I followed it, the fish didn't seem to run from me. It just completely ignored my existence. Running would have made it stand out more from the kelp, after all. Instead, it swam slowly through the waters. A large predatory fish swam by, likely looking for a meal. The kelpfish froze and didn't move a muscle. And just like that, it went completely unnoticed by the predator. Once it was alone, it began slowly swimming once again. Its slow meandering through the currents only made it appear more like severed kelp. Every so often, when all the other fish seemed to be gone, the kelpfish would take a small bite from a leaf of kelp. However, its mouth was not like that of a normal fish. Instead, it had a long, trunk-like protrusion, almost the width of its body, jutting out from its face. At the end was a small, flat, brown beak, similar in shape to that of a parrot's. Its beak functioned like scissors or nail clippers, snipping off small pieces of kelp. I suspect the trunk is full of molar-like teeth that further grind up the leaves before digestion. I have decided to call this creature the long-nosed kelpfish. Many, many other creatures have used the kelp forest as a source of food or protection, but few as well as the kelpfish. In fact, without this forest, this fish would have never been able to survive, or would never have existed in the first place. It's always amazing how an animal can be so specialized for survival in its environment.